Welcome to this new virtual series, A Walk in the Park with Gil. My name is Gil Penalosa, in Spanish, Guillermo Peñalosa. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and lived during my childhood across from a public park. My parents say that actually I lived in the park. Many years later, I served as Bogota's head of parks, sports and recreation. Magnificent opportunity. I led the design and construction of over 200 parks, from Simón Bolívar Park with over 100 hectares to multiple neighborhood ones, mostly in low-income areas. We also took a program called Ciclovia with a few kilometers and turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. Over 120 kilometers, car-free streets, where every Sunday over 1 million people walk, run, bike, shop, socialize, and mostly enjoy the presence of each other. Now I live in Canada, and 15 years ago created 880 Cities, a non-profit organization which focuses on parks, streets, and other public spaces and their uses by people of all ages and backgrounds. I was elected chair of World Urban Parks twice and now serve as its ambassador.
Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to the second session of A Walk in the Park with Gil. I want to thank 880 Cities and World Urban Parks for supporting this initiative. And also, I want to thank Camila Uriona, the Manager of Communications of 880 Cities, Sabrina Macri, Executive Producer of these webinars, and Lourdes Quiroz and Silvana Sobrevilla, who are the translators into Spanish. But today, we're talking about Mexico. We're going to be talking about Chapultepec Park, a magnificent park in the heart of Mexico City. It is about 2.5 times the size of Central Park. It has had, in the last 15 years, over $25 million invested from the private sector, and over 86 million from the public sector for operations and capital. So today we have two amazing guests. One is Lilia Haua Miguel. She's the CEO of the foundation that runs this park, the private sector. But we are also going to have from the public sector, Tanya Müller, who's president of the Zamorano University and who was the Secretary of the Environment from 2012 to 2018. And she not only helped collaborate and work with Lilia on this project, but also work in other projects in the city. So initially, Tanya is going to talk to us about Bosque Aragon, that has 164 hectares, 406 acres, and Bosque Tlalpan, 253 hectares, over 600 acres. Why? Because this was a citywide effort on large parks. So we're going to hear both. So Tanya and Lily, thank you very much. So we'll hear first from Tanya.
Thank you, Guillermo. It's wonderful to be here with you. And thank you for the invitation. And I'm very excited to share the floor with Lilia Haua, with whom, as you've said, we've collaborated. So for that. So as I was saying, we wanted to prioritize, moving from the cars all the way to really prioritizing the users and the visitors in Chapultepec Park. And here you can see the two images of before and after in the second section of Chapultepec. Something that I really think was one of the most innovative programs that we implemented in the urban parks in Chapultepec, in Aragon, in Tlalpan, is that we opened the parks for night activities. So normally parks would be closed in Mexico City at 6 p.m. in the afternoon. And when we open these spaces for night activities for people to enjoy with family and with friends, understanding that many times under the week, due to their work commitments, they couldn't enjoy a natural green space in such an urban area as Mexico City. So I think this was one of the most innovative and successful programs, just thinking a bit outside the box, and that we know are so successful in many parks around the world. So this is also one of those innovative programs that we did of lake cinema sessions. And these programs were standardized both in Chapultepec, in Aragon, and in Tlalpan. And here is an image of Aragon. Just even though the landscape is different, we really wanted for the people to have the same opportunities to enjoy these programs in the different urban parks we have in Mexico City. And I just want to highlight that in Aragon is a park that is right in the middle of low-income neighborhoods in the city. So these programs become especially relevant in these neighborhoods of low income. And all of these activities and programs were free of charge. So they were obviously a huge success. We also prioritized bringing back cultural festivals and events in all of the parks, again, in Aragon and in Chapultepec. Moving on to Aragon and understanding the time constraint we have. Aragon, as Gil said in the beginning, it's the second largest urban park in Mexico City in a low-income area, and we really wanted to bring the standards of this park to the same level of Chapultepec, which has been a reference not only in Mexico City, but at the national and international level, just understanding the historic importance that Chapultepec has. So we did, what you could consider minor upgrades and refurbishments in the infrastructure, but the impact, as you can see in the images, is enormous. People go from not using that, that infrastructure to really, feeling that they are valued and come back and use the spaces. And you can see that very, very clearly in the images. This is another example. Aragon had a pool that had been, abandoned for decades. It was a high demand from the community. So we really, that was one of our first important investments in Aragon Park. And you can see here the huge success that it has. And we really, as I said, prioritized that the refurbishments that we did were high quality for the people, understanding that even though, it is in a low income neighborhood, we needed them to also feel valued, and that had to be expressed in the refurbishments that we did. Something that was also very interesting is that we made an analysis of those asphalt areas within the parks that really didn't have any use, and we transformed them into green spaces, as you can see here in the image. And you can see how immediately people will use that green space and make it theirs. This is another clear example. This is the entrance of the Park of Aragon, the metro entrance, and you can see how, the poor conditions that it was in. And this is how you receive the visitors. And in the lower image, you can see the informal commerce and the asphalt area. So what we did, we again, did some major maintenance and really making people feel welcome from the metro entrance. And as you can see, we did these more pedestrian-friendly long avenues where there used to be asphalt. We reorganized the informal commerce, the same as was done in Chapultepec and the other urban parks, and just really trying to standardize the quality of the urban parks and improving the experience for the visitors. What we also did in all of the three major parks, and these are images of all three of them, is bike schools. And we know this is very important because Mexico City also had a very ambitious bike program and bike lanes. But in order to guarantee users and to make them feel confident, we took advantage of the infrastructure in the urban parks to have these massive bike schools, especially in the summer, where working parents could leave their children safely for a few hours for them to take these courses. In all of the three parks, we also innovated with the barters market and green markets, where we would bring in local producers from Mexico City. Mexico City has 60% of rural land, so we have an important horticulture production within Mexico City. And here the producers, without any cost, were able to present their products and have, a green market for the visitors of all three parks during the weekends. So these are some of the activities that we also standardized within the three parks, understanding that geographically they are in very different areas of Mexico City, and we wanted to give the same experience for, an important part of the citizens of Mexico City, independent of the geographical area of where they live. And then here again, a bit more image of the cultural nights and picnics that we did in Aragon and in Tlalpan. And I would like to end my intervention with the social impact study that we did for Chapultepec and Aragon in this case, understanding that they are the two main urban parks in Mexico City. So the aim was to identify the emotional and behavioral changes that users had from the improvements that were made in the areas of infrastructure and social programming, and the assessment for future actions. So the study was one of the last studies we conducted in 2018 to really evaluate and assess the improvements we had made in the urban parks. So some of the indicators that were analyzed were, health, equity, comfort, sociability, sense of being, resilience. And what we did in both parks, we did a social mapping of the areas that had the most use and made well-being surveys, social experiments, and community workshops to understand how those improvements, either in infrastructure or the social programming, had impacted them, or how they had received these improvements. So there was a depth research in these key social zones in each of the parks. And each of these areas, as I mentioned, were evaluated with the indicators that you can see here and compared with other areas and classified in terms of these indicators, understanding where they were highly ranked and where we could still have more improvement. And obviously some of the key findings, and as you can see, is, we know green areas surrounded by nature equals social trust. Micro communities give us a sense of belonging. Various activities and infrastructure also give us that sense of belonging within the parks. And obviously accessibility and comfort of the paths is very important for inclusion and equity, as we know. So these were some of the key findings that validated that the improvements we had done were really having the impact that we were looking for. Social programming, it was very clear that it gave users and visitors a sense of happiness and also a sense of belonging. That is something we're looking for. But obviously there is always more work to be done. And in this map, you can see the paths and where there were barriers that were identified, where there are still opportunities for the future administrations to improve on. And some of the future opportunities, and I don't want to go too much into detail into them, is, just having more recreational and cultural activities, self-expression, community art installations, temporary paint activities were identified. And something that I think is very important and we should highlight, that many times, we don't have to invest so much in infrastructure, but we do have to guarantee proper maintenance, sites, benches, shaded areas for people to really enjoy these spaces. Ensure basic needs such as toilets so that users will also remain for longer periods in the parks. So I really think, and I think this is, connectivity. And this was the final, we had a very nice report come together for both of the parks, just understanding the impacts that we had with the investments in infrastructure and programming, but also the opportunities that were still there improvement. And I really think this was my last slide. Thank you very much. So I really think that this and I'm going to end with this study really helps you validate what you are doing and the investments you're doing, but it also helps you be very clear of where you have to continue to do the work. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tanya. This has been fascinating. If we could have the link to the study because it's very interesting. And now Lilia Haua Miguel was the CEO of the Bosque Chapultepec. Will do a presentation. This park recently won from the World Urban Park, the best large urban park. So she's going to have a short video, a slide presentation, and then we are going to have a dialogue, and I will ask them some of the questions that you are sending. Hello, Lilia.
Hello, thank you so much. Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Jill, for the invitation. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be with you and with Tanya, that we used to work hard and very nice together. So I will share my video. Thank you.
Mexico City is one of the largest cities in the world. And within its realm lies a majestic beating heart. El Bosque de Chapultepec. With its almost 2,000 acres divided in 3 sections, to which a 4th one is about to be added, this green lung is one of Latin America's biggest urban parks, offering its visitors a plethora of attractions amidst a beautiful natural setting. It is a place for all, one that breathes, grows, touches, and transforms the lives of all who visit. More than a park, it's an iconic space, sheltering an important aspect of Mexico's national history, as well as world-class cultural venues. In addition, Chapultepec is considered an environmental area of importance, amounting to 60% of Mexico City's green canopy, from the great Tlatoanis, emperors and viceroys, to our presidents, illustrious men and women, visitors, both local and from abroad. Chapultepec has been and always will be an active stage where the social, political, cultural, and natural life of Mexico develops. This beacon of national identity has preserved its majestuosity throughout the ages, portraying itself as sacred and strategic, magical, as well as splendorous and intimate. Chapultepec is one of the oldest parks in Latin America, as well as a living witness to contemporaneity. With its more than 95 monuments, 30 fountains, 4 lakes, sculptures, and pre-Hispanic remnants, it is also one of the principal cultural and art stages in the city, hosting the most important museums complex in the country. Its natural setting provides a venue for ongoing cultural events, such as concerts and festivals. All in all, the arts live within Chapultepec. There's no better place that represents Mexico's diversity. The 19.2 million annual visitors to Chapultepec enjoy a democratic, diverse, and inclusive environment. Its offer includes activities for all types of audiences: families, senior citizens, children, local and international guests, people with disabilities, athletes, and those who are only looking for a quiet place to connect with nature. Chapultepec contributes something to everyone, and everyone feels a piece of Chapultepec within them. Citizen participation sits at the core of Chapultepec's livelihood. During the past 16 years, the park has bestowed the opportunity to more than 50,000 volunteers to participate in many of the 200+ service activities. All this has been accomplished due to a 3-way system of governance, where the city government authorities, the people through a citizenship council, and the private sector through Probosque Fiduciary have implemented constant upgrades that allow Chapultepec to continue its stance as Mexico City's most important national monument. Lest we forget, Chapultepec's environmental retributions are unquantifiable. It provides fundamental services such as water conservation, oxygen provision, and climate regulation, among others. It is home to more than 120 animal species and more than 170,000 trees, including the ancestral ahuehuetes, or Mexican cypress. With all this in mind, it is easy to understand why Chapultepec is not only the pulmonary vein of the city, but also its beating heart. For its beauty, its immensity, for its history, for its social, cultural, and environmental influence. Chapultepec breathes life into Mexico City. For all of this and much more, it is with great pride and humbleness that Chapultepec receives the Gold Distinction in the 2019 International Large Urban Park Awards. Thank you, World Urban Parks, for granting us one more reason for this heart to keep on beating. Thank you for recognizing our wonderful Bosque de Chapultepec.
Well, the Chapultepec Park is located in Mexico City, one of the largest and most overpopulated cities in the world, with 22 million inhabitants. The park is divided in 4 sections. The first section is the historical part of the park, where we have the Chapultepec Castle, the archaeological museums, the Moctezuma baths. The second section of the park is a more recreational and sporty area. The third section of the park is a green area. And the fourth section is a new area, which in 2019, the president of Mexico City, it used to be a military area, and now 75 hectares are included into the Chapultepec Park. So with that, now we have more than 750 hectares divided in 4 sections. And of course, is the green lung of Mexico City. In 2003, it was declared as an area of high environmental value on the category of urban forest. And this is preserved through a joint action. In 2004, a group of businessmen decided to join the city's government and the Citizen Advisory Board to begin the recovery of the Chapultepec Park. So we constituted a trust and took the responsibility of fundraising through campaigns, events, and alliances to hire a remarkable interdisciplinary group of experts. And in collaboration with the authorities of the government and the Citizen Advisory Board, the team began the planning, development, and co-financing of the 3-section master plans. The tripartite management theme, I think it's one of the successful things that we have in the way we are working now. The Citizen Advisory Board is made of 7 prominent civilians. We have architects, lawyers, environmental experts, etc. And it's an interdisciplinary group committed to the park's comprehensive rehabilitation and enhancement. Its goal is to guarantee citizens' involvement in the decision-making process and to provide a space where issues concerning the park and its woodlands can be discussed. Of course, the authority, which is the Mexico City's Department of Environment, they are the authority over the park as a whole. And then we have the Bosque Trust, which is us, and it's a product of a private venture devoted to raising funds for the urban forest preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation. As of today, it consists of a council of 18 entrepreneurs, a small team of operatives, and an office. This is the organization chart of the authorities. We have the Mexico City's government, we have the Department of Environment, the general management of the system of protected natural and high environmental values areas, and the Chapultepec Forest Management. And the organization chart for the fund trust is the board members, the 18 board members, 1 president, and the operative team, which, as I said, is very small. How do we work? Well, we worked through 3 master plans. We have more than 42 executed projects, and we have fundraised more than 552 million pesos from 2004 to 2020. Our core sectors for these master plans are mobility, water and infrastructure, commerce and services, and green spaces and recreational areas. During 2004 through 2008, we worked on the first section master plan. We closed completely this first section of the park for 8 months, and we really make a very hard work. I'm going to show you some of the pictures of some of the works that we did. We did an important work on the forest sanitation. All the trees and all the soil was in a terrible situation. So we really did and focused on the forest sanitation. We remodeled the main access of the park, the King's Road renovation, the rehabilitation of the hydraulic infrastructure. We have 4 lakes at the park, and these 2 lakes in the first section were really rehabilitated, and you have no idea all the things we found in the lake. This project, the Anthropology and Tamayo Art Museums, we made a pedestrian exit, and this park won an international prize. The Gandhi Park rehabilitation, the Winston Churchill Park. This remodelation, we did it when Tanya was the environmental minister. This used to be a park very well located and situated between most of the most important hotels and the National Concert Hall. It was full of vendors. It was really dirty. It was in a terrible situation. So we did a great job. We cleaned up all the vendors, and now it's a beautiful park where all the tourists and all the people of the city who are coming to the concert halls can admire and can walk in it. Some playground parks, Líbano Park. This is also a special remodelation that I want to share with you. This building used to be the entrance to the Chapultepec Castle. It's a very antique building, and it was in terrible situations. The building was almost falling. It has like 2 or 3 different floors. It has 7 showers, restrooms. It was terrible. So we applied to the World Monument. We applied to the World Monument Funds. We received some resources, and with some other fundraising that we did at the Trust Fund, we restored this antique building. And now we can feel very proud that it's our site museum and visitor center. In the second section of the park, we worked from 2013 to 2018. This was under Tanya's administration. And this playground is a very special one, since as you can see here, we have all a special walk for all the children that need to use a wheelchair. So all the park is adapted for a wheelchair. So we can say it's a democratic, diverse, and inclusive children's playground. This running trail is one of the most famous and favorite for the runners in Mexico City, which is called El Sope. It's open 24 hours per day. It has illumination. It has a lot of trees. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful place, and it's, as I said, democratic, diverse, and inclusive. The Xochipilli Fountain and Composers Promenade, it used to be a promenade who unifies 2 parts of the second section of the park. It was in a terrible condition. It was very bad. It was not maintained. So we really worked very hard to make this promenade a spectacular one. We have fountains, and here we can see how immediately people uses the space and converted theirs. This is another project, a very special project. We were in the second section because this is not a normal project. As you can see, this is a beautiful fountain, which is called the Tlaloc Fountain. And it's one of the most magnificent sculptures of Diego Rivera. Diego Rivera is a very famous artist from Mexico. And in this place, we have a beautiful mural, which is called Origins of Water. And the specific and important thing of this place is that in Mexico City, we need to bring water to the city from different states. So the water comes through Toluca, through another state, and it came through the water, and the water was going through the face from the Tlaloc, going into this building, which is called Cárcamo de Dolores. And from this space, the 33% of the water of the city is distributed. This project is also very nice to share with you, because in all this, it is a low-income neighborhood. So what we did is we invited 2 or 3 different groups of skateboarders to come with us, to plan with us, to develop with us this skate park. So now, instead of being just a plain space with nothing, we are inviting all the people and all these low-income neighborhood to come and enjoy the skate park. And as you can see, it's a place that it's completely used, and we are trying that all these young people, instead of doing nothing, come and do sports and enjoy the park. This is our last project we did in the second section. It used to be a sports area. As you can see, it was in very bad conditions. Now we're just going to inaugurate it, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks. We have 3 sport fields, illuminated and in perfect conditions, and some playgrounds. As Tanya told, the mobility was really an important issue for the second section of the park. So we redesigned and reconfigured the second section's inner circuit road. And now we can say that we designed the park for more persons and less cars. We have an important upgrade, and it's a more accessible and safe for visitors. So we have a bicycle pad, a jogger pad, and a pedestrian pad. Commerce and services was another issue that we used to have in the second session. There were plenty of stands all over the place, different colors, different shapes. They were not very clean. So we organized them. We made special stalls for them that were fabricated with them to try to group according to the type of service that vendors provide. So now we have these very nice stalls. In the third and fourth sections of the park, now we are in process in developing the master plan. It's a priority project of the federal government. It's headed by El Maestro Gabriel Orozco through the Ministry of Culture in conjunction with the local government of Mexico City and, of course, the Environmental Ministry. And the goal is to transform Chapultepec Park into the largest and most important cultural artistic complex in the world, which considers the unification of the 4 sections, as well as the rescue and the rehabilitation of the existing environmental and cultural infrastructure. It's going to have a very big approximate investment of 10,000 million pesos, the biggest we had ever had in the Chapultepec Park. And it has 4 axes. It's 1, to make it sustainable and a biocultural forest. Second one, comprehensive mobility plan between the 4 sections and their surroundings. The third axis is expand and strengthen cultural infrastructure. And the 4th axis is right, inclusive, diverse, and safe. Here are some pictures of the 4th section of the park. And last but not least, I think that to have a volunteer organized and professional program in the park is a must. In the Chapultepec Park, we have 4 different types of volunteer. The Green Chapultepec is focused on individual or small volunteer groups with an open call, establish schedules and low maintenance activities of green areas and infrastructure. The pro-forest companies, which are focused on large and medium-sized groups, mainly from companies with corporative volunteer programs. Here we do a lot of activities as minor pruning, cleaning of areas, reforestation, placement of mulch, painting benches, etc. And our forest guides, that these are themed tours guided by volunteers. We have the historic tour, the Huehuetes Trees tour, workshops, monuments and fountains, etc. And it's important to say that all these tours are adjusted to the park activities program, and these routes start at the site museum, which is the beautiful building that we restored that I showed you before. And the last one is share your experience. So volunteers join different events that take place in the park, such as the nighttime picnics, the boat movie theater, or they can also help in certain areas of the park that require specific activities, such as the teachers for the seniors, yoga classes, etc. Nature is inexhaustibly sustainable if we care for it. It is our universal responsibility to pass a healthy earth onto future generations. Sylvia Dawson. With this, I finish my presentation. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Lily. I think it was fantastic. I think that it's really critical for everybody listening for this for a minute. In the next 40 years, we're going to double the population in the world that lives in urban areas. Today, 3.5 billion people live in urban areas. Within 40 years, we're going to go to 7 billion. So half of the homes that will be around in the world in 40 years do not exist today. Now that we see these magnificent parks, the goal is we need to reserve the land for parks all over the world, or we will not have them. Of course, the majority of the growth is going to take place in Africa, in Latin America, in India, but also in many other places. As example, in the US. The US in the next 40 years is going to build over 50 million new homes. That is more than the homes of Canada, France, and Australia together in the next 40 years. In Canada, all of the big cities are going to increase by more than 50% the population. Are we living in areas like these ones? First question, Lily and Tanya, is the public-private? Because sometimes people are concerned of public-private partnerships, and they say, are they privatizing the parks? Are the parks public? What is the issue with public and private? How can they work together? Do they actually work together? That's why I invited today the two parts. Tanya was Secretary of the Environment in charge of all of the parks of Mexico City, and Lily, the CEO of the most important trust in Mexico related to parks, the Chapultepec Trust. Tanya, from the public sector, is it privatizing the parks?
It's not privatizing the parks at all. On the contrary, it's adding, the goodwill on behalf of the private sector. And I think, as Lily mentioned at the beginning, the strength that Chapultepec Park has is that it has the trust and the board of trustees, but also this council of these, citizens that filter everything and are really looking there that everything is done in favor of the public and the well-being of the public, and then the government. And you might not always see eye to eye, but definitely when you have very, transparent, frank, direct conversations, you come to agreements, which I think is fundamental. And I think that is why we were able to advance so much in between 2012 and 2018. For the first time, we developed 2 master plans. We implemented almost at 100% the master plan of the second section, as Lily presented. So it's really in benefit of the users and the visitors, and always prioritizing the visitors that, and I just want to highlight that in Mexico City and Latin American regions, a lot of our visitors come from low-income areas and neighborhoods. So parks really become extremely relevant for social interaction and well-being.
Okay, and because there are many different conservancies. New York City Central Park was one of the initial ones, but now there are many in small and medium. So what Tanya has said is very important. Those are public parks. They will always be public. Anyone can come in for free. There is no charge. The only reasons that they join forces, public and private, under many different schemes. Sometimes it's for capital projects, other parts is for operation, but the private foundations, the private entities cannot do anything without the permission of the government because it is a public park. And Tanya ended up talking about the low-income people. Lily, tell us a little bit about the equity, the inclusion, the mix of wealthy people and poor people, because I've seen some of the wealthiest people in all of Mexico running in Chapultepec Park next to some of the poorest. So tell us about the mix and the inclusion.
This is one of the most important great things that Chapultepec has, is that it's a park for everybody. You have international people, you have local people, you have neighbors, you have children, you have elderly people. So really Chapultepec is a democratic, diverse, and inclusive space. For example, in the jogging pad in El Sope, you have, as you mentioned, you have the very powerful people running, and you have people from the neighborhood coming and running together. And they run in the same teams and they work together. So it's a very inclusive space. And as I mentioned, we have, for example, a specific place for elderly people. We have plenty of activities for them, but we also have for the children, and we also have for women. So it's a diverse, and we welcome everybody.
And Mexico, as well as all the countries in the world, we doubled the life expectancy in the last 150 years. The people over 60, we have 1/3 of our lives. Can you expand a little bit more, Lily, on that? What can a person between over 60 years old do? What kind of programs do you have for people over 60? Not only the very, very old, but everybody in that third of their lives.
After 60 years, you are more than welcome. It's called Jardín de Adultos Mayores, which is a beautiful, beautiful garden with a lake and with fountains and with a lot of sculptures. It has a beautiful library. So we have, every Thursday, we have music with a teacher of dancing. So we have dance, we have a computer special classroom, and we give them computer lessons. We have a beautiful library. We have English lessons. We have a volleyball court. So it's really, we have bicycles. So it's really an active place for them. They really enjoy being there, and it's a very nice, beautiful garden for them to be.
Thank you very much. And Tanya, could you tell us a little bit about this study? You mentioned a study that is very, very important because it's good to evaluate before, during, and after the changes. And also you evaluated on equity, which is really critical, equity, and even post-COVID, the umbrella has to be equity and health and sustainability. Can you tell us a little bit about this study and if that is an ongoing study?
So I wouldn't know if it's an ongoing study. I believe it's not. This is something we considered was very important, as I mentioned, to validate that the investments we had done had really, had the impact that we were looking for, especially socially. We want social cohesion. We want inclusion, diversity, and especially to understand where can we improve? Where are the opportunities? So these studies really allow you to understand at a community level, at a user level, what the impact has been, and not only what the public policy maker, thinks the impact has been, because we always think that the programs we do are great, and many times they are. But these studies that come from a third party really help you validate that and help you understand what the community or the users want, what they like, and what they would like in the future for the park. And when you involve the community and the users in these studies, workshops, surveys, they also have a stronger sense of belonging and that their voice is being heard for future projects. And I think this is very important when we want to empower communities and help them, have this strong sense of belonging.
And Tanya, how do you develop that sense of belonging with the low-income areas of the population, as well as with indigenous and other minorities? Because one of the magnificent things of parks, of public parks, is that are wonderful equalizers. When you're in the park, you don't know if someone is wearing a $250 pair of running shoes or a $50. You don't know, everybody's the same, and that makes, so how do you integrate in that sense of belonging indigenous populations, low-income, visible minorities, ethnic minorities, racial minorities, etc.?
I mean, it's always a challenge, Gil, to have them participate. But of course, when we did the surveys, when we did the workshops, we really tried to identify these users and visitors and to include them and have their voice being heard. But I will say it is a challenge just because, understanding that when they attend the parks, their hours and their work demands are very different from someone who has a much more stable income. But we definitely did do the effort to go out and identify these users and have their voice heard, and for it to be reflected or represented in the results and outcomes of the study. And just to give you a clear example, those users were the ones who really said, for example, we need the bathrooms to be open all the time, to be, clean, because that will allow us with our children to stay more time in the park. So that is something that it's a minor detail that can escape you, but it's very important for these groups of people.
Oh, that is a gigantic issue, the restrooms, to have public restrooms open 365 days of the year. That is magnificent. We need it. Also, because if you have little children, for everybody, but especially for people with little children, or also for older people, as I mentioned, the people, as we get older, people need to go to the restroom more often. So if we want people to enjoy the parks. And last question, Lily, tell us a little bit about the uses. What is the role? Sometimes people focus too much on the infrastructure and not enough in the uses. You say, let's do move in the park. Oh, we don't have money. Let's do walking groups. Oh, we don't have money. So sometimes we don't have the sense to do the activities, but we have the millions to do projects. So how do you mix both to make sure that you have the right balance of infrastructure, but also of uses and activities?
I think that's a very good comment, Jill. I think that if you have a beautiful place, but you have it with no uses and with no person enjoying, and you don't have the families there, the place values zero. So it is very important to have an active park, a live park, full of families, full of activities. So we are trying to work very hard in having cultural activities, sports. As I mentioned, we have a lot of historical and we are trying to make the park every day more active. Now with the COVID, it was a little bit complicated to maintain all the activities that we used to have, but it's very important to have this balance. Not only invest in infrastructure, you also need to invest in all these activities. So that's why the volunteers programs are also very important in the park, because they make all these volunteers, they feel that the park is theirs, they take care of it, and they bring their families, and so it's like a snowball that is getting bigger and bigger. So every time you make all these volunteers campaigns, all these people come and enjoy, and they make the park much more lively. Imagine we have 20 million visitors per year, so we do have a lot of activities coming and going inside the park.
Wonderful. I love how you make an emphasis on the volunteers and the sense of belonging, because when people volunteer, it's a win-win. The community wins, the park wins, but also the volunteer wins, because they feel a sense of purpose. The world, which is something that is very exciting And both of you, thank you very, very much, Tanya, and thank you very, very much, Lilia. This has been fantastic. We thank you because you have made Mexico City and the world a little bit better for everyone. Thanks, everyone, for attending, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, taking a walk in the park with Gil.